Our kind of agriculture started about 1930. So we've been hearing that for 70, 80, 90 years, that we have to have that kind of agriculture for yield. We are now getting scientific after scientific after scientific study saying that this kind of agriculture can feed the world. So that the organic intercropping can feed the world. Don't take it from a political economist. Go look at some of the scientific journals. And that's what I'm saying. We need all of us to understand this. I am not a geneticist. I am not even an agronomist. My co-author is. My co-author is an agronomist in Southern Africa. So we do have evidence now that this can bring us the yields. The other aspect of this is that it's sustainable, low use of chemicals, low use of water, and it's more nutritious. If we're down to one variety of wheat, that's the major 12 plants, the major component of our 75% of our food, imagine the nutrition that we're missing. If we're eating many, many different kinds of plants, we get more nutrition. It is healthier. So let me finish then with some of the aspects of resistance coming from the African continent that we could listen to and try to understand. And like any exchange of information, we have to adapt it back here. But what I am suggesting is that we don't have much more to share with the African continent about agriculture, because our approach is the 20th century. It's last century. Their approach is the 21st century. I'd like to give you 3 quick examples and then I'm finishing. The first one is at the community level. In Southern Africa, they honor farmers' rights, so that if there is a seed, a farmer can share it, market it, breed it, plant it, harvest it. It's the right of farmers to have full access and use of seeds. Why? Because we need the farmers to feed us. If you go with the patenting of living organisms, that cannot be shared. And international law is moving to take farmers' rights away from them. But in Southern Africa, on the ground, farmers' rights is the rule. They can share and exchange their seed. They're also trying to protect their indigenous seed in community seed banks. And they don't trust their national governments any more than we do. So they're saying that, okay, we're going to have a seed bank here in the village, and we're going to send some of our seed to the national repository. And it's our seed, because it came from right here, and it came from right here for 100 years. We're going to have the national government register it, but we are going to, and we're not going to patent it. We're still going to freely share. But what we are going to do is ask for prior informed consent. That is consent of the local community before the seed or the frozen embryo is taken out of the country. So they're doing many, many kinds of things in terms of organizing farmers. And another quick example, they conserve and preserve by planting. We call it in situ conservation. You save seed by planting it. You don't put it in refrigerators. You lose as much as 30 to 40% of your seed in refrigerators. At the national level, you heard me say the registration of the seed, so at least they know what they have. But more important, the national governments, and this is unanimous across the African continent, have said no patenting of seed. They took a unanimous resolution to Seattle at the World Trade Organization in 1999, unanimous from the African continent, and the US government did not even allow it on the agenda in Seattle. However, there is a success story coming from the governments organized, because the World Trade Organization, you can patent bacteria and have it international law. And they wanted to move between 1995 and 2000 to allow the patenting of plants under the World Trade Organization. We're in 2009, and that has been blocked. So there is national organizing to try to stop this patenting of living organisms. And then finally, at the international level, there is the World Trade Organization that allows the patenting of bacteria, so there's that approach. But the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations in 2004 passed an international treaty for plant genetic resources, where it's now illegal to patent 93 species, here how small. But at least it's recognition that you can't patent food. These are 93 species of food. In fact, it covers about 85% of the nutrition. So we have a counter-international law now to the World Trade Organization's approach of patenting. We have the International Treaty for Plant Genetic Resources. You can imagine which country is not party to this treaty. So at the local level, there is resistance among farmers. At the national level, there is organizing to deal with the registration of seed, not the patenting, and to try to influence international law. And at the international law, there are counter laws being written up. So what I would like to end with is to remind you what biopiracy is. It's not just the taking of the plant, that's okay. It's the patenting of the plant, or the genetic modification of a plant in a way that it pollutes other varieties of the same species. And then finally, the resistance on the African continent to this approach to agriculture, and that they have answers for us that we need to learn from. This is sorghum. It's indigenous to Africa, and it's like the amaranth. It is more healthy than corn or wheat or rice. Again, you can pop sorghum, you can make it into flour, pablum, you can even brew it into very delicious beers. Okay. So they do have answers for us, and we need to hear that there's a new approach to agriculture in the 21st century for sustainability. Thank you very much. Onto the field at night and takes a sample of the leaf and then says, aha, you have our Monsanto gene. This one is genetically modified. So they have a marker to say, you have our sample and you didn't pay royalty. The farmer says back, but you polluted my field. You polluted my field. I didn't plant this. And then it's in the courts. There's about 800 cases. And guess who's winning?
Monsanto.
Yes, Monsanto's winning. Yes, sir.
Yeah, is it correct that genetically modified seed cannot be, well, if you grow corn that's genetically modified, but those seeds will not produce again, you have to go back to the
You are all very well informed. Thank you. Genetic modification, let me go into that in a minute, is different from a hybrid. A hybrid is just crossbreeding, but it can be done in the laboratory, or the poorest African farmer creates new breeds. What genetically modified means is you're taking one gene from one plant, and sometimes it's from another species. So it also introduces cross-species mixing, cross-species mixing of genes that will not occur in nature. And the one you've all heard about is a fish gene in our tomatoes, so that they can be transported at a colder temperature so they can travel 3,000 miles to our table, literally. If you're allergic to fish and don't know there's a fish gene in your tomato, it can have consequences, and we are finding that in the United States. So genetically modified is one gene from one organism into another. It may be within the same species, it may be totally cross-species. Okay, with that then, you have this genetically modified soya. Let's take that one. All it does is it allows that soya to resist the herbicide that Monsanto sells that you spray on your field. So you spray on your field, you get rid of the weed, and your crop is still really good. So it, not only are you getting the seed from Monsanto, you have to get the herbicide. Now that particular soya will regenerate, okay, like a hybrid does a couple of times, a couple of seasons. So not all genetically modified are non-regenerative, but they're very much weaker, okay, like a hybrid. If you plant a hybrid by about the third season, certainly by the fourth, depending on the plant, you don't want to plant it again. So it's the same as a hybrid that way. But first of all, it's illegal. You're required to go back and buy the seed again from Monsanto, even the second year. So if you replant your genetically modified soy